welcome to Soccer 101. My name is Daryl Grove, and sitting across the table from me, it's a man who knows how to watch a soccer game. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, here I sit. Hopefully I do.
Yeah.
We shall find out, though.
So today's episode it's going to answer the question that people have asked us before. How do you guys watch games? Because we do a lot of analysis, I can say the word, for the Total Soccer Show. And I think people want to know, like, what's our method? What's our process? So this sounds self-indulgent, but I think people want to know how we do this, right? This can be a guide, how to watch soccer for tactics, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because there are obviously lots of different ways to watch games.
Drunk in a bar is one.
That's the best way. Obviously, it's the way you get the most out of it with no emotion
It's the least
involved.
analytical way.
Yes.
The most shouty way.
Yeah, so there are many ways to do it, but this is the way that I think works for us. I'm going to say, like, kind of like individually, but also as a unit.
Yes.
That, like, if one of us is just screaming at the TV the whole time, which has never happened, I don't think, but if it did, it sort of colors the opinion of the other.
October 2017 was a bit shouty.
We were just quiet. We weren't mad, we were disappointed, but also mad is about where we were on that day.
So we haven't compared notes. I've got my notes on how I do this. You've got your notes on how you do this. This would be interesting to see if we disagree, because I feel like we've been doing the same thing all these years. My idea is that we just trade back and forth things that we do while we watch games to try and figure out tactics and things like that. I would ask you to just start as basic as possible. We'll start easy and maybe move on to the harder things as we go.
All right.
Fair?
Yes, I think I'm going to take it in a slightly difficult way first, though, because I'm going to move us away from TV for a second, because I think watching in TV and watching in person are two somewhat different, not completely different things.
Okay.
So all I had was like just the pointer that it's way easier to watch a game tactically in person. So if you have the opportunity, go to a game in person, because the camera is focused on the ball and who's on the ball and then showing you highlights. It's not focused on how high up is the defense. Are they pressing from the front? What's that midfielder doing?
But if you're there in person, you can look at any part of the field you want.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You're not dependent on a producer telling you what to do.
Exactly.
Right?
And you can even watch the coaches. You can see, are the coaches happy with what's happening? Are they screaming? Are they yelling? Are they directing certain people to do certain things? All of that is much easier in person.
So obviously it's easier to watch games on TV. And if you're talking about analysing a specific game, it is quite hard to definitely get tickets to a game. But are you also saying that in terms of just learning how to analyse a game, if you want to analyse a Champions League game, is it worth going and watching a USL game just to get that experience?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, honestly, I think it's even like if your kids are playing at a fairly high level, if you have kids, don't just show up to a random youth tournament. That could be weird. But if like you can see what coaches are trying to do, the adjustments that are being made, you can even get an idea of the shape, I think, just from watching live soccer, period.
So tip number one is go and watch some live soccer to get the full experience, and that will make you a better informed soccer watcher.
Yes, so that is now out of the way. We can talk about the way most people will end up watching soccer. The way you and I will end up watching most soccer is on television.
Okay, so the first thing I think people want to know is like how is it that we are able to say this team is playing this formation? Yeah, right. One of the easy ways is look it up to begin with, right? Usually, like, I don't know, Soccerway, or I use Google Cards. Those things are good. Or any website will have, here's the starting formation, right? There's a 70% chance that it's correct, but don't fully trust it, right? But it's a good starting point to at least think, because then you can look at what they say the formation is and where the players are, and you can use that as a reference or a baseline to be like, okay, here's what they say. Does that match what I see on TV? And already you're in the mindset of asking questions and checking what things are. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you, except that my note is disregard the TV lineups. But
I didn't say TV lineups.
Right.
I said internet lineups.
Okay,
they're way,
fair.
way better.
But I think, like, what I mean by that more so, I think it applies either way, is just that, like, see what people think is going to happen, see what the TV lineup is, or what the MLS soccer lineup is for an MLS game or US game or Soccerway or what have you. But then don't look at that as like, oh, this is definitely what they're doing, because if you do that, you're putting yourself in a, like, arbitrary construct to begin with of like, oh, they're definitely in a 4-4-2 when the team is in a 3-5-2, and it might take you a while to notice, like, oh, wait, hold on, that was totally wrong.
So the key is ask yourself questions.
Yes.
If you're watching with a partner or a friend or whatever, ask them questions, right? And you both pay attention to the game, and you can figure those things out together.
A quick example of that would be USL League One or ESPN Plus, whoever is in charge of it, tends to get the wrong graphics for a lot of the Richmond Kickers games we've seen.
It's almost like they're deliberately doing it.
Yeah, but maybe.
Fullbacks in central midfield, wingers in defence.
It's a weird cry for help from the person who's in charge of graphics. This isn't where I'm supposed to be. I signed up for hockey. I don't know what this game is.
Shots fired at Vista World Sports.
Indeed.
That's the production company.
And deservedly fired, I would add. But like, I think sometimes you and I will have that conversation. Like, is there any way this guy who usually plays left back is playing center midfield, or is this center midfielder is playing right wing? And sometimes it is. Sometimes you'll be like, oh yeah, I saw them do that, in like a U.S. Open Cup game, or they did this recently, or like you watched a different friendly than I did when we extend it to international coverage, and it will be a helpful way of discussing it versus like they say he's a right midfielder, but we know he's not going to be on the right side.
And someone like Philip Lahm or whatever, that occasionally happened.
Yeah,
right? He
exactly.
would just be right back, and then he would be in central midfield.
Yeah.
All right, here's the big question.
Yeah.
How do you determine what formation the team is playing? If you're watching on TV and you're trying to figure out what the formation is, what are the methods you use to sort of decide what it is?
I think a couple things. Like, number one is I try not to make a just quick, like, scan of the field in the first minute. Because a lot of times if you do that, again, I think the biggest thing with watching a game tactically is not letting a momentary sample size dictate your entire understanding of the game.
Okay,
that if you happen to see the left back push forward, like, for like one moment, and you're like, oh, they're in a back three now. They're definitely in a back three.
Yeah.
And that was just that happens sometimes.
It was temporary because the left back went forward.
That will happen with you and me, where I'll be like, oh, the left back's, they're in a back three. That's crazy. And you're like, I think he maybe just chased that ball a little bit further forward, and you see that left back drop in. But if you persist in the idea that, no, they're definitely in a back three, then again, you're shaping the game from your own perspective.
That's what not to do.
Yes.
All right.
So then what I would say is basically it's you looking at like dead ball situations, especially goal kicks, is one where I think you can really easily see the rudimentary shape. You can see definitely in a back four. High line, maybe not high line. You can see sort of who is operating centrally, who is spread wide.
Yep.
Goal kicks are very good for that, but I would say you kind of got to check in every couple minutes just to be like, okay, yeah, Michael Bradley is still central and hasn't become a wide midfielder for whatever reason.
And I would even argue that a lot of teams now have an attacking shape and a defensive shape.
Yep.
So if you watch a team take its own goal kick, you can sort of see what the attacking shape is. If you watch the opposition team take a goal kick, you can see what the team that you're looking at's defensive shape is. So that's a great restart. A goal kick is a great restart to look at a team, because that's the chance for everybody to get back in position, get back in shape. It's teams essentially resettling, getting ready. I think that's when you're most likely to see the base formation.
Yep, I agree. And then I think moving off that, if, say, let's go with the Richmond Kickers as a like hometown example.
Okay.
If the Kickers take a goal kick short and they play it to one of their center backs, I think in-game or on TV, you can start to see like, okay, there's definitely two center backs. They're staying that way. So I think even if they play short off that goal kick, it gives you an idea of roughly their transitioning into attack shape.
Yeah,
so you can see those sort of transitions as well off of the set pieces.
All right. Another thing you always talk about is don't watch the ball.
Right.
Right? So I wanted to almost not steal that point and set you up for it.
I mean, you can steal if you want to. But yeah, I think...
But that's the mistake most people will make, right?
Yeah.
If you're watching it and sort of paying attention, but you're just following the ball, you're kind of missing everything. I mean, the ball is only in one place and the field is very big.
I would almost argue that I would also argue that the reason to watch the ball is if you want to see what a specific person is doing with it, or if you're looking to see who is on the ball most frequently, because that can help you. If it is the left center back routinely is on the ball more than anybody else, then that can show you. Like, that can at least tell you, like, is that a thing they're trying to do, or is that a thing they're being forced into, versus they want their attacking midfielder to have the ball.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So I think, but aside from that, yeah, you want to try to look at, like, okay, when the ball is further up the field, what's the defense doing? Who is moving into support? Who is pushing further forward?
Yeah.
If they're in defense, who is, like, dropping back? Who is keeping shape? Who is pressuring the ball?
And these are just questions you've got to keep asking yourself while you watch, right? And you've got to consciously not look at the ball and look at, okay, when the ball's on the left wing, what is the attacking right back doing?
Yeah.
Is he moving up to be a wide option to switch the field of play, which is what like Reggie Cannon did for the US at the Gold Cup, for example? Or does he stay home with the centre backs in a more defensive shape? And then you'll really know sort of what that team plan is.
Yeah, exactly. I think with that, though, that you've got to, like, we're giving a lot of instructions that make this sound very difficult, but I compare it to like a real-time strategy game where you have to kind of pay attention to 14 things at once, and therefore you cannot give anything 100% of your attention.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, this sounds a little bit abstract, but you have to be able to be like, oh, okay, Daryl is stepping to the ball. I feel like Daryl's been tasked with stepping to the ball when it's in midfield. I'll check back on that later, but right now I'm going to pay attention to this other thing. You can't just keep watching that one player, because otherwise you just focus individually on that one and not everything else that's happening.
It's kind of hard, right? You have to scatter your attention a little bit, look at the right back for a bit, look at the midfielder for a bit, figure things out. All right, ad break coming. There's one more thing I want to get to.
Let's do it.
Look for man marking. I feel like increasingly there's often a plan to man mark like the defensive midfielder who's distributing the ball. The number 6, if you listen to our What Do the Numbers Mean episode. And I think there will be certain situations where you will see very specific and influential players being man-marked by the opposition to try and cut off passes to them. I think that's an off-the-ball thing that's really worth looking for, because that really tells you, one, who the most important player is, and two, what the opposition team is doing to try and stop the flow of the ball to that player.
I don't disagree, but this is one of the things, and I have this, we can talk about it now or later on, but like I struggle sometimes with patterns, and in that moment, like I am very slow to pick up on, like, oh, this player is deliberately man-marking this player or this creative player or what have you. And I think that's something that I tend to end up reading after the fact, because I think I struggle in that moment to see those two things simultaneously. Like, what is this player doing? Oh, but this player's on them. Is that a thing that's happening routinely? So is there a way that you find easier to sort of pay attention to man marking or to know when that's happening?
The thing is, either alone or with someone else, to see it once and say, is that just coincidental?
Yeah.
And then, or is it happening again? And the only way then is to check back maybe a couple of minutes later and see if it's a repeated pattern. So I think the thing with pattern recognition that I find is really hard is you can't accidentally see it. You have to almost see what might be a pattern and then check later, is it a pattern?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that's the only method I can think of.
I do, and I think that's, I'm going back to my notes real fast, but I believe that's what I have, is patterns can be hard unless you're specifically looking for them.
But so that's about being alert, right? You've got to see something and ask yourself, is that a pattern? And then check in on that next time, a couple of minutes later, and find out whether it's a pattern or whether it's a thing that just randomly happened.
All right, I have another point on patterns that I think will be useful, but first I think we probably should talk about today's sponsor, our friends over at Postmates.
Postmates, the sponsors of the first season of Soccer 101.
Indeed, they fly over the moon on their bicycles to deliver you your products.
That is their logo,
or
right?
so their logo would have you believe.
It's very E.T.-ish.
It is.
Maybe E.T. delivers it?
I'm going to say that's probably not unintentional.
Or Elliot? Is it Elliot is the kid?
I think so.
Yeah, let's say it is. Yeah, so whatever you need.
Finger.
If you need a finger.
Yeah. If you do, go to the hospital.
Go to the hospital. Don't go to Postmates for fingers or other body parts. But any type of food.
I think that's Mafia Mates is what you want to go to.
They will get you medicine. They could go to CVS or Walgreens. That's on the list of things they'll go and pick up and deliver for you. Any type of food, groceries, anything else. Postmates delivers it. Postmate it. It's a verb now. Yes. Postmate it.
And I think a key thing there would be anything you're craving. And I say that intentionally because there can be those
Don't eat fingers.
Don't do that. But there can be those times. Also, don't do what I'm about to say, which is like there can be those times when maybe you've had a few drinks and it's like you've gotten home from the bar, it's 11 o'clock, and you're like, oh, I could do some food. I'll drive to get food right now. Don't do that. Use Postmates. Postmates will deliver you that food.
You won't go to jail.
Then you won't go out of jail. Exactly. Where they will deliver you your food, but it will not be pleasant food in jail.
It's very very predictable.
I don't know if Postmates delivers there, but other people will.
I'm not sure you're allowed to get Postmates deliveries in jail. So also, if you're one of those people who just doesn't like going to the store. You know, some people just don't like the social interaction. You
raising
Come
hands.
On. Yeah, you're always chatty when you get to the register.
I think you pointed this out very well, that I tend to be chatty, but then somehow I get sucked into like longer chats that are less like how you doing, and more of a like, let me tell you about my grandkid. It's like, oh boy, okay,
so
here we go.
If you don't want to hear a thesis from someone at the register, you can use Postmates. Someone from Postmates will go and collect the thing you want, bring it to you. They'll hear the thesis register.
My brother, I went to watch my niece play soccer, and my brother was like, yeah, definitely come, but like, you got to tone down the conversation a little bit.
Really?
Or he was like, you got to play it down a little bit.
So you can download the app, the Postmates app for iOS, which is Apple, or Android for free, Free. And then you can browse local restaurants, businesses, and then you can track your delivery in real time.
And best of all, for a limited time, Postmates is giving our listeners $100. That's all caps. That's a big deal.
Okay.
$100 of free delivery credit for your first 7 days. To start your free deliveries, download the app and use the code SOCCER.
That's soccer for $100 of free delivery credit for your first 7 days when you download the Postmates app. So you won't pay any more than if you went to the store. So that the delivery part will be free for 7 days, unless you somehow spend over $100 in deliveries.
In which case, well done, but also, what are you doing? Go to the store. Go to the store at that point.
Anything you need, anytime you need it, Postmate it. Download Postmates and save with the code SOCCER.
All right. Thank you very much to Postmates for sponsoring today's episode of Soccer 101. I want to go back to patterns for a moment, because I think one thing that I like actively was working on during the Women's World Cup, I mean this sincerely, was like trying to use like the reptile like background part of my brain to inform what's happening with patterns, because there are so many times that we'll be like, we haven't seen Tobin Heath on the field much, or like we haven't seen her on the ball much. Wow, we've seen Megan Rapinoe on the ball a lot. And I can like say that in my head and then immediately dismiss it, whereas my brain has just told me the pattern. My brain has told me they're attacking down the left side through Megan Rapinoe. They're not using Tobin Heath to attack as much.
So the key part is to then ask yourself, why is that?
Exactly.
Right? I honestly think the key to all this is just to keep asking questions. Ask it to someone you're watching with, or ask it to yourself.
Yeah.
And then try and answer it, obviously.
And that's another one I had is like, asking to yourself is fine. Asking to other people around you is fine. Telling to other people around you is where I think that's where I get frustrated. It's like if you yell, like, why are they in a 4-5-1? This doesn't make any sense. They need a goal. Again, people around you don't really want conflict will probably be like, oh, I guess they're in a 4-5-1. And if you listen to the screaming person in the bar, that tends to be how you see the game.
Yeah.
But if you're asking, if I say to Daryl, hey, are they in a 4-5-1? You're much more inclined to be like, oh, no, they're doing this, as opposed to me being like, I can't believe they're in a 4-5-1.
Or honestly, if they are in a 4-5-1, there might be a good reason. So the question that you just yelled might be worth trying to answer. The answer might be that they think the best chance is to absorb a bit of pressure and then counterattack.
I think,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I 100% do, because I think that's where it's always better to be asking the questions, because then you're trying to figure it out. Even if the coach is wrong, even if they've gotten the tactics wrong, you're still trying to figure out what they're doing as opposed to just being annoyed that it's happening.
Yep.
That doesn't really help you understand what's going on. It just makes you angrier in the long run.
And before we get into super detailed stuff, I've got two big picture things. One is pay attention to the whole game.
That's probably a good idea.
If you're casually watching and you're distracted and you're talking, or you're on Twitter, or you're like in a bar drinking and not really watching, you're not going to be able to analyze the game because you're not going to have enough information. If you really want to do this, you've got to watch, I want to say, almost every second of the game.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the entire thing. The second thing is, a thing that we do a lot is, if you really want to, rewatch it. Because then you take the emotion out of it. You take the narrative is already set. You know that this team won 2-1. And then you can watch it and you can watch for tactics. You can pause and look at this and that. And you're not so worried about the flow of the game. So I think an emotionless rewatch is a good way to go if you're trying to analyze for tactics.
I agree. And that's coming from a person who does not like watching games knowing the score.
Yeah.
That, like if we have that option, I think will usually say like, I'm fine with knowing the score. Let's just watch the game. I prefer the suspense. But you're absolutely right that there have been many games where we have been like, this didn't make sense. Why did they do this? This was so dangerous and they were so deadly. And then we rewatch it again without the live, like, emotional aspect of it. It's just like, oh, they're clearly doing this the whole game. How did we? There have been a ton of times that we're like, how do we not see that?
It makes sense in hindsight, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you watch The Sixth Sense all the way to the end and then you go back and you're like, oh, I can see it now.
Color
you know
red. The color red, my friend.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's lots going on there, right?
Yeah. That's color red means they're dead.
Is
there
that
you
right?
go. Sixth Sense, yeah.
Didn't know that.
You're welcome.
All right.
Also, spoiler alerts for Sixth Sense.
I tried not to. I feel like you did it anyway.
Bruce Willis is alive the whole time? Does that help? Is that a helpful thing?
Bruce Willis is getting paid the whole time. There we go.
Yes, he is. He always makes sure of that in his movies.
Ignore the commentary.
Yep.
Even if it's good, even if it's like Ray Hudson and you enjoy him, commentary will distract you from what's happening on the field.
Yes.
They don't talk about the specific things that are happening on the field. If you listen to the commentators, and again, I'm not throwing shade at any commentators here, if you listen to the commentators, they will be talking about things that are other than what's happening, and they will distract you. They will drag your attention elsewhere. You won't be able to analyze the game if you're thinking about where someone's hometown is.
True.
Or someone's parents are there or whatever.
And I don't mean this as... It's always important to know if the parents are in attendance. I don't even mean this as like shade, because it's a normal thing that if you're a person who's narrating a thing that's happening, you want to create a narrative.
Yes.
You want to have the game in a lot of ways like basically fit in with your narrative. So if it's Cristiano Ronaldo starting for Portugal and he ends up scoring a goal, even if against the run of play and he hasn't had a very good game, you're still going to hear commentators be like, oh, of course, it was always going to be Ronaldo, whereas maybe in that game, no, it was more likely to be somebody else. Quaresma was going to be the one to do it, but Ronaldo just happened to be there. Yeah, but I think that then obviously with the Trivella, but then I think like the commentators naturally are going to build that narrative of like, what's Ronaldo doing? Where's Ronaldo? Oh, he had that shot. Oh, but he couldn't quite find space, but now he finally did. And they're ignoring all the other stuff that's happening in the game to allow Ronaldo to get a shot off.
All right, you ready for some more detailed stuff? Okay, I think a lot of people are interested in, but don't always find it easy to know what the defensive plan of a team is. And I'm thinking specifically of pressing.
Okay.
How are a team pressing is one thing. When are they pressing? Where are they pressing? How are they pressing? All these things I think are more complicated than people think. Pressing isn't just yes or no. It's about how high up you do it and all that kind of stuff. So I'd love to talk for a minute about how you identify where a team is pressing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different questions in there. So where do you want to go with first?
Is a team pressing or not? I guess that's the basic question. If you're just watching a game and you're like, all right, say it's Liverpool, and you're asking, is this a game where they press or is this a game where they don't press? That's actually a very bad example because maybe they always do.
Well, it's actually not. I think that's a more helpful example because there's obviously different types of pressing. And here, if you're talking about Liverpool, if you're talking about a team that kind of employs that counter press, then I think a logical place...
we'll talk counter presses after, maybe.
Well, but I think it's a good place to start is what happens when they turn the ball over is a good place to go with are they pressing or not. That if Liverpool lose the ball and they all just drop back, or if any team loses the ball and they drop back in, then you know right there... Okay, maybe they're pressing, but they're not doing the immediate counter press that teams do. So that's a good sign right there. You can tell, okay, they're not trying to win the ball back immediately as soon as they turn it over.
And I guess if you're just looking to decide what a team's tactics are, look for what happens with any team. If they lose the ball while they're attacking, what do they do? Like you said, do they drop back or do they immediately swarm and try and win it back high? And then you'll know this team that's called counter pressing, right? Lose the ball and try and win it back. You'll know that a team is doing that, or you'll know that a team's not doing that if they collapse back into defensive shape.
Right.
All right.
So then after that, the next thing I will go with is basically when do you see a person start trying to apply direct pressure to a player on the ball?
This is when the opposition has the ball and we decide, and you haven't just turned it over. The opposition maybe takes a goal kick, plays it short. This is where we find out is the other team pressing or not.
Right. So you can see there, how high up they're trying to engage gives you an idea. But then the next thing I look for is, say it's Barcelona and Luis Suarez goes charging forward. Yeah. The next thing I will immediately look for is
to try and win a ball off a defender. Yeah.
Who then goes with him, or does someone go with him? Because if Suarez just goes sprinting forward to try to put a center back under pressure and everybody else is sitting off, then you can kind of guess from there that he's just doing this on his own. So what I'll look
it's a solo mission,
which you'll see sometimes. You'll see the person who's really up for it trying to kind of motivate the team, and they'll go charging forward and then get really annoyed when everybody else hasn't.
But that means
it
wasn't the plan. Right?
Exactly.
It's just you freelance that.
Yeah. So then the next thing I'll look for is if Suarez goes charging down a center back, does everybody move with him? Is that the trigger? Yeah. Because then we look for what is the pressing trigger that is sending people further forward? Because otherwise it's just a kind of inconsistent press. And when the press is inconsistent, it means they're not doing it very well.
All right, so some pressing triggers. It can be just that the farthest forward player initiates it because he decides to, and that is just the trigger, and the rest of the team goes with him, right?
Yep.
Another pressing trigger is the team with the ball plays the ball backwards.
Yep.
Right? If it goes from a right back who's a little advanced and he goes deep to a centre back, a lot of teams will take that as, okay, they're literally going backwards. Now's the time to force extra pressure. A third, I'm really just trying to do these off the top of my head. Third one is a mistake. If you see say a centre back has the ball, they pass to the other centre back, and that centre-back takes a heavy touch, and there's a momentary that's a time to go, right? That's a time to initiate the pressure when they're already a bit wobbly, right? And that's a way of making it more effective and less predictable.
Yeah, and then the other one I would say is almost the trap press is a thing you can look for, which is, say you have your two centre-backs spread wide for a goal kick taken short. If Daryl just goes running at one of the center backs, then the other center back is on. So it doesn't quite work there for me, but what I mean more so is say Daryl is the forward, the ball goes to the left center back for whoever team you're defending, and now you've cut off the ball to the other center back and to the goalkeeper. Now if you see everybody kind of pounce on that, it's almost like they're kind of setting the trap to get the other opposition into one area, and then they press. So it's also looking at okay, that pass is cut off, and now these other two midfielders come charging in. That's clearly the trigger.
I think that's a really important thing. It's not just about putting pressure on the ball, it's about directing the ball where you want it to go, right? Like if Luis Suarez presses someone, but he presses them from their left side, that means he's forcing them to their right? Which should mean that when that player plays the ball to their right, a Luis Suarez teammate should be ready to pounce on that. That's setting the trap and ready to take it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We're going deep on pressing. We're almost in danger of doing a whole pressing episode here, which maybe isn't a bad thing. Another thing I want to talk about is the line of confrontation.
Okay.
So if there's not a straight-up press, like pressure on the ball, I always look for how far forward is the highest line of the opposition defence, meaning essentially the forwards. Where do they stand ready to tackle? Sometimes it's the halfway line. Sometimes it's way deeper than the halfway line. Sometimes it's all the way up in the goalkeeper's face. So I always look for where's the line of confrontation.
I agree with that. The thing that maybe makes this more challenging or isn't very helpful, what I'm about to say, is I also look at who is engaging in that confrontation and where, because one thing I was noticing, Travis and I did a thing about homegrown players who succeeded
on the Top Draw Soccer Show.
We did, and one of my concerns about Miles Robinson, the Atlanta center back, was I kept seeing him. His distribution was a little lackluster. That was a point I made. But also, I know I was kind of let down by that one. But also, I kept seeing him step out, and he was trying to make a play in the midfield, for example, as a disruptor. And I think that can work in a back three. But if it's one center back stepping out and the other one is staying home, I think looking to see who is stepping out and when, and is that what they're supposed to be doing, or is it just that they've sort of, like, if a team is sitting off and sitting off and sitting off and they only have a line of confrontation when they think there's a loose ball, but then one player goes marauding out to try to make a play, again, that helps you understand that I think that player is sort of breaking the system and doing their own thing. Yeah.
That's interesting. I do want to not confuse listeners, but when we talk line of confrontation, we're usually talking about the farthest forward player, not the deepest player like Miles Robinson. But that does you raise an interesting point, which is I love to look at what are the centre-backs doing, what is the centre-back partnership, and sometimes it is that one defender is tasked with stepping high and trying to win a ball, and another is tasked with staying a little bit underneath him, right? Which gets into what you were talking about with Miles Robinson.
Yes, sir. So I think like the center back positioning definitely key, but then I just think more so like if say the team bypasses, gets into an attacking like the team's defensive third, like you and me, if we're on if we're playing, the team has kind of gotten to attacking position. Are we trying to like step and make sure they don't get any sort of chance, which is a little bit more of a press to me, versus like sitting off and frustrating and like forcing them into shots from distance? Then we can know that like the line of confrontation is probably fairly deep, but it's also the case that then we're not even trying to like step and win the ball. That's not the game plan.
All right, so we've talked a lot about defending.
Yeah.
What about identifying attacking game plans?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to like my point about patterns a little bit.
Yes,
that like
I think that's
who's
true.
on the ball the most.
Who are they trying to give the ball to the
exactly.
most?
And I think maybe those are the two key things. It's like who's on the ball the most and who do they clearly want to be on the ball the most. Because if those are very different answers, that shows you that the defensive team is doing their job pretty effectively.
There's also what areas of the field are they concentrating in, right? I always look at, is a team trying to slice passes through the middle and attack through the middle? Are they sending direct balls to a target striker? Or are they happily working the ball wide and going at the fullbacks? Because normally there's a bit more space out wide, a bit more opportunity to isolate defenders and go at them. And I think it's really all about just literally watch when a team receives the ball, what do they do? And do they do it repeatedly? Do they play long direct balls into a striker, or do they try and pass through a central midfielder? Do they ping it out to the left back and try and get it up to the left winger? There's usually a plan of attack that a team is sort of decided on and is attempting to implement.
Yes, and then maybe this is like slightly too nuanced or too like in my own brain.
Impossible.
But like also looking at what they're trying not to do, and the best way I can explain this is like say like there's like a right midfielder who's like come more central, has received the ball, and there's an overlapping fullback. You will occasionally see that player sort of see that pass, know that pass is on, and be like, I don't want to play that ball, and like they'll play it more centrally. And rather than, again, this goes to asking questions, rather than being like, why would you play that? It's on. Recognize that like, well, the only reason why you'd play the attacking fullback on is for that player to then cross the ball. So they've maybe been told, don't cross the ball. I'm going to see how often they cross versus how often they try to keep the ball in the middle.
Yeah.
And like what they don't do can also show you what they're trying to do.
That absolutely makes sense. And again, I think it's about answering the questions. When you say, why wouldn't they do that? He was on. Instead of just yelling at the TV, actually try and answer that question in your head.
Yep.
Why wouldn't they do that? There's probably a reason. These people are professionals.
There you go. And then my final note that I had in my things for how to watch a game tactically is that once you know the formation and once you think you have a rough idea of where the players are trying to be, see how it adjusts specifically after halftime. Because that's
especially
where
if Pochettino's coaching.
Especially if Pochettino or maybe Tata Martino.
Yeah.
That tends to be the time that you'll see the coach be like, okay, we've been trying to get the ball to our left winger. They're like double marking him, so now the left winger is going to come more central, and we're going to try to create overloads in the middle. So if that left winger has been wide and left every single time in the first half, and in the second half they're more central, then you can sort of spot that by being like, well, wait, he was left wide the whole first half, and now he's not there anymore. I wonder what happened there.
Yeah.
That tells you what's happening.
And I would argue if you have done the thing that we talked about at the top of the show where you sort of establish a baseline of knowing what the formation is and where the players are, like this guy's on the left, this guy's on the right, this guy's behind him, you're then set up, you're in a position to notice changes.
Yep.
So you'll notice tactical changes faster than people who are just casually watching. Yeah,
You will, absolutely.
The other thing is, I think it's worth saying, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can just sit in a bar with a beer, casually watch and just look up when the ball is in the attacking third and just look for the goals. There's nothing wrong with enjoying soccer that way. This show is kind of designed for those people who want to go to that next level and figure things out.
I agree. I would add this, though, that if you're watching it in a bar, this is kind of my rule. When I'm watching stuff in an area where I'm not really paying attention to it, I'm not really going to take much away from it. So I'm not going to get overly emotional about, they won 3-0 or they lost 3-0. I'm going to be like, well, I don't really know what happened. And I think that's the only issue I have with what you've just said is if you're in a bar having a few drinks and then screaming about why didn't they do this, it's well, you weren't really paying attention, whereas the person who was on the field directing everything probably paid a little bit more attention than you did.
Yeah, I mean, this is still going to happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe someone will hear the show and be convinced not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You may have reduced the incidences of that by 1% with this show.
We'll see. Probably.
And I'm taking that as a victory.
I'll take that. My final point, if you don't mind. You mentioned earlier, like watch the players off the ball or watch what's happening off the ball.
Yeah.
I would extend that to like watch individual players for like a couple minute like chunk and see what they're doing, because a player, to go back to him, like Luis Suarez, we talk about all the time how he stays in an offside position and uses that to try to pull the defense back. Or he'll shift from one defender to another while staying in an offside position to see what that defender does. But if you aren't paying attention to him and you're looking 40 yards like further back the field where, say, Gerard Piqué's on the ball and moving it back and forth with Umtiti or something, you're sort of not paying attention to everything that Luis Suarez is doing to create an opening and to get to space. And so when he gets the ball, oftentimes you'll hear like, oh, he just managed to find space. And it's like, no, he didn't. He spent 10 minutes working that little gap.
I'm actually really glad you raised this, because I think soccer is about creating and exploiting space for the most part. And I think a lot of what happens off the ball is teams trying to create space so they can then exploit it, right? And you'll notice a lot of things happening off the ball where players are working very hard at trying to make that happen, but it's either not even on the screen or it's on the periphery of where the ball is and the periphery of everybody's attention. And you'll notice a lot of really interesting like positional interchanges. The famous one, that great Real Madrid team, the Zidane-era team, the original Zidane-era team when he was coaching, had Benzema as a striker, Ronaldo as the left winger, but then Benzema would deliberately drift to the left wing and Ronaldo would cut back inside. And the idea was that Benzema would pull the centre-back with him, bit of space opens up, Ronaldo runs through it and exploits it. Exactly. That's a real basic example of a thing that if you watch that off the ball, you'll see them trying to make that happen.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right.
I got excited just talking about that.
I mean, I'm not surprised by that. Are you done with your ways to talk? Because I have one.
I guess things keep coming to me.
Well,
we can roll as long as we roll.
I have a weird question for you. This is more like Darren Taylor time for a second. So I tend to be more interested in history and then like military history, military strategy and tactics and stuff like that, which I think is like to your point about like you want to attack the area where the defender isn't. Like that's a fundamental idea of like warfare throughout history. Yeah. But you are not a person who's as I understand it, at least, is big into like military history, strategy, and stuff like that. Even strategy, like video games. So, like, what do you think it is that then appeals to you about soccer tactics? Is it just that you enjoy the game?
It's what you said earlier about wanting to know why something happened.
Gotcha.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, if a result happens, I want to know how did this happen and why.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I was that kid who was always, why? So the parents got to the end and
that does not surprise me.
There's no answer, but at least now...
Because that which is can't not be.
Right, exactly. But at least now I'm not phoning my mum and dad back home and asking them, why did Spurs win? Like, instead I figure it out for myself.
I wish that were still kind of the case. That they were like still prepared for that. Like, well, Harry Kane wasn't fit.
Yeah.
Like they're ready to go.
I didn't even watch. I don't like football. Ask me about tennis. So okay. Same question to you. Why are you interested in doing this? Because I feel like whenever we do this in the office, you're not annoyed by it and like, oh, we got to figure this out. You're engaged and you're into it, and I'd love to know why that is for you.
I think because like generally, I think it's the same thing you said. Like, I want to know why something happened or what the coach is trying to do. But I think that's the bigger thing for me is we'll have these moments every now and then. I always go back to, and I can't remember the specifics, but do you remember the Mexico game in Copa America Centenario, I think it was, when like Juan Carlos Osorio set up in a certain way, and then literally from kickoff they went long and then completely changed the shape.
Against Uruguay.
Like that to me, like we kept going back and going back and going back when we rewatched it to figure out like when did they change their shape, and to discover that it's basically from kickoff, which means he set up in a way to make their like opponent think like, oh, they're definitely doing this.
Yeah, he sent the message, this is us.
Exactly.
Diego Reyes it was. Yes. I think was in midfield and then went to the back.
Yeah. Like those moments of seeing that like, ooh, that was like a huge part of their game that they were trying to disguise, and being able to spot those moments that end up having a huge impact on the game. I find that incredibly interesting.
Because you love like Easter eggs in movies and stuff like that, and knowing the little things. Yeah. So maybe it's the equivalent of that, right? It's probably like having the little Easter egg, extra enjoyment of knowing about the next level things.
I feel like your answer is better because mine is just more pedantic. But yeah, like
as long as we both enjoy it, it's all right, right?
I think like, but then I do look at it from a like almost the military history aspect perspective of like, oh, this is like Alexander the Great, like splitting his cavalry and like and setting them back towards the center, because that ended up being like that stuff of like attacking areas that shouldn't be vulnerable but are because of other things you've done.
Yeah,
that is the crazy anarchic but planned out aspect of soccer that can happen. I find so fascinating to go back and watch, because it shows you how alert to the moment these players are and just how smart they are to be able to know that, like, I am making this run, so 15 runs later, this person is open. And I do think there are coaches who are like that. That is fascinating and amazing and slightly terrifying to me. Because that person in another world is Genghis Khan, but instead Pep Guardiola coaches Man City.
Well, that's... Do you think in the modern era?
Yes, I absolutely do.
All these generals would have been soccer coaches.
He is one oil shortage away from being a warlord.
Yeah.
Yes, that's Pep Guardiola.
As soon as we split the atom, all that was out the window and everybody became a soccer coach.
Exactly.
All right, that seems like a good note to end.
I guess.
If you want to hear us do this to a game, like to break down games, we do it regularly on our other show, the Total Soccer Show. This is our original show. It's been going 10 years. It publishes Monday through Friday. I'm saying this because there's a chance that someone's listening to Soccer 101 doesn't know about the Total Soccer Show. Wherever you found this podcast, you can also find the Total Soccer Show, and I'll guarantee there's a recent episode.
I'm glad you will guarantee that. I'm glad you will do all of that housekeeping work you just did, because up here I'm still thinking about how I want to patent and copyright a flower that grows and blossoms at the exact point every single season so it can be a regular lily.
I normally do the bad puns.
You're welcome.
Thank you for taking over.
My pleasure.
If you enjoyed Soccer 101, it is a new show. We want it to launch as big as possible. Please, I mean, it's not new if you listen to it 2 years from now, but please share it with a friend, share it with an acquaintance, share it with a workplace proximity associate.
Here are these lunatics talking about Genghis Khan and medieval battle strategy, but also soccer. Enjoy.
If you could share the Apple Podcast link to the show on Twitter, that would be great. Just get the word out there about Soccer 101. All right, I'll end by saying I've been Darryl Grove.
I've been Taylor Rockwell.
Thank you for listening to Soccer 101.